I'm terrified. Buddhism is a non-proselytizing religion, which was one of the first things, as I was reading about religion, that was one of the first things that attracted me. I deplore the narrowness of saying, well, I'm going to heaven and you're going to hell because I'm the only person who knows the way. And that's terrible to me. And Buddhism, there is no us and them, there's only us. So that attracted me. The other thing was the great emphasis, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, on compassion. Compassion is the beginning and the end of the path, as far as my teacher goes, as far as he says. So those are the two things that got me into Buddhism. I'm not going to try to give a history or delineate the various sects, but give just a little basic on what all the sects agree on. And that is, in the beginning, the Four Noble Truths, which was the first teaching by Shakyamuni Buddha after he attained enlightenment. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering. We all suffer, to greater or lesser degrees. In America, we have less physical suffering because most of us have food and a sheltered place to sleep, and there is no war here. And we have health care. But even we suffer. We have negative emotions. We have anxieties. We have girlfriends that don't behave as we think they ought to, or bosses, likewise, or boyfriends, of course. The wrong person gets the nomination for your party. There's a lot of sufferings. More subtly, we suffer from our needs. You need that new iPhone. You just need it. And you get it. And then 2 days later, you need something else. You think that if you only get together with the right person, you'll be happy for the rest of your life. But it doesn't pan out. And of course, being born is suffering. We get sick, and we die, and our loved ones die. So there's suffering even in our first world. The third world countries obviously have a lot more suffering. And then, since Buddhism believes that animals also are sentient beings, they have even more suffering than we do. And we eat them. So that's the first truth. We all suffer. The second truth is the truth of the cause of suffering. Suffering arises from attachment to desires. Our desires are for things which make us happy and our loved ones happy. Our desires are never ending. But it's only the attachment that causes the suffering. If we can just relax a little and realize that, yes, our loved ones are going to pass away and leave us. We're not always going to get what we like. We may sometimes be hungry. If we can just, I'm teaching the third one. Oh well. But we hang on. We hang on to those desires. We hang on to those negative emotions. We hang on to those hatreds. And therefore we continue to suffer. The third truth is the truth of the end of suffering. Suffering ends when the attachment to desire ceases. Contentment with what comes, no matter how dismal, contentment with living in the moment, que sera, sera, what will be, will be. That's very hard. It may be easy right now. It may not be so easy when your boss yells at you or when your child gets sick. To be content at all times, we have to follow the path that frees us from suffering, which is the fourth truth. That truth is taught in the Eightfold Path, which I am not going to go into. It's way too long for this. So I'm just going to give a brief statement which can be said to summarize or encapsulate the activities of a Buddhist. To avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to purify one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Evil is hurting others, good is helping others. Again, we cannot live without hurting others. We eat, we're eating something. Even if you're a pure vegetarian, animals were displaced or harmed when the ground was plowed. Someone who works in the fields to get your food for you, unless you do it all yourself. I have gardened and grown almost all my food myself. And even then, I knew I was killing things as I dug in the ground, even with my hands. But we do the best we can. And then our negative emotions, even the subtle ones, cause harm to other people. We say something nasty, or we just ignore someone who needs our help at the moment. We ignore our children because we're too busy working. We ignore our work because we're too busy childrening. There's no end to the way we harm others, and all we can do is try the best we can to be as non-harmful as we can. I still eat meat, but I eat much less than I used to. And I try to eat animals that were raised as kindly as possible. I almost never eat pig, because pigs on big farms have a horrific life. But sometimes bacon calls me. Helping others is pretty clear. You can help others directly. You can help others by giving them things that they need, by giving to charities, by merely smiling at someone who looks down. That's a great help. We can help others by being patient and by being an example. We can help others in many ways. But the basis of everything, the basis of all of this, is to purify our mind. Our negative emotions, which cause our negative actions, which cause what is called karma, which is our negative habits, which draw grief down on ourselves and on others, must be purified. And it's a long, long process. If you believe in many lives, it's a very, very long process, which I do. So you meditate, because meditation is how you can calm and heal the mind. I can't just sit down and calm my mind because I know it will be good for me. The only way I can calm my mind is by raising compassion for others. Because as I've been taught, my meditation helps others. So the more I care about others, the more valid my meditation will be, the more it will help me, and the more it will help others, even ones that I don't know. We can all raise compassion. You see a Facebook post about an abused child or dog, and you get tears in your eyes, and your chest hurts a little. And you share the post, and maybe you give to some charity that helps dogs and children, or children. But then you move on. The way I've been taught, you must bring up compassion in every moment of your life. And the prayer wheel, which I've been spinning, is a way to do that. There's prayers in it, and it reminds me physically and mentally, because I have to keep a little notice of it, of compassion, because the prayers are, of course, compassionate prayers. So, another thing I do is the very first prayer I say every day in my tradition is I say a prayer which gives to my enemies, people who've been mean to me, people who've done me wrong, or people who've just offended me in some way, murderers, rapists, any person that's on the bad side of the aisle. I pray that that person attains enlightenment before I do. All those people attain enlightenment before I do, before my loved ones do, which puts my compassion on an impartial basis. And with that basis, you start to move into the area of universal compassion, which is bodhicitta, love for all beings impartially, and the intent to attain Buddhahood so you can help all beings impartially. Because I am told that my prayer and compassion not only helps me, but it helps all beings by creating this pool of goodness in this miasma of foulness. That's what took Buddhism from a philosophy to a religion, because that's a mystical thing. That's in the area of beyond this life, beyond this body, beyond the reach of my hand. I did want to say something about mantra. Mantra is usually associated with deity, which are those beings with 4 arms, sometimes demonic-looking beings. Deities are not gods, they're not demigods, they're not anything like that at all. They're simply a pictured embodiment of the qualities that you wish to bring to yourself. So the aspects of the divine, the love, the principles, the qualities, the impulses that you wish to attain, you put into this deity and you say, I want to be that. And that's what it looks like. And who cares what it looks like? I'm not very good at visualizing anyway. And all those things, the swords and stuff, they all mean something. It's all symbolic. And it's pretty, though. Some of them are very pretty. I've memorized a lot of prayers and a lot of mantras. You have to pay attention, though, because if you've memorized a prayer, sometimes you can forget what you're doing and just start garbling it without actually meaning it. The other day, it was actually very recent, I started saying a prayer, and I was praying to take refuge with all the Goudas. Jesus, not Buddhas, Goudas. That was not paying attention. So I say these things, and then I sit. And once the compassion arises in my heart, I sit. And with my mind turns towards others, I'm a little less apt to think about myself, to think about my needs. Thoughts will pop up, I just let them go. Anxieties will pop up, I let them go. At first, I could only do this for a few minutes at a time, sometimes only 2 minutes, and I would be back in insanity. So then I say the prayer again, and I try to get the compassion again. And I sit again for a couple of minutes. I've gotten a little better at getting there, calming my mind. I can do it for longer now. Sometimes when you are doing really well, even though you're not supposed to pay attention to how good or bad your session is, you just keep practicing. You get a warmth in your navel. It's like a little flame, and that is the flame of compassion. It's called a lot of things. In Hinduism, it's all about sex, and I guess it is in Buddhism sometimes too. I'm not that technical. I'm not that far. Anyway, so I just keep bumbling on. I saw my teacher at first every year. One year I saw him for 7.5 weeks. It was marvelous. It was just the most amazing thing. I came home, I had quit my job to go, and I turned around and I walked back to Arizona from Wisconsin with my dog in a backpack. It was a spiritual journey. That was lovely. One other journey which has been amazing and most effective to me as a Buddhist was the death of my sister a year ago last spring. A year ago this spring. She died very quickly of cancer. And I was able to get there for her last 3 weeks of life. The first week she was still conscious and lucid, so we could talk, and it was lovely, although sad. And then she sank further and further into coma. And I found, I would sit with her at night because my niece was, had kids to get off to school, etc. So I did the night shift in our own home, in her own home. I found that sitting by my sister, holding her hand, feeling the love for her and for my family, And I was so focused that I could meditate for half an hour or 45 minutes at a time, which is the first time I had ever been able to do that. So her passing was an amazing blessing to me, because after that I practiced very hard when I got home for a long time. Through that compassionate experience and through that recognition that life is short and you never know when it's going to end. My teacher says that the test of your practice is how much compassion arises just naturally in your heart every day. A person yells at you and you don't think, this bastard, why is he yelling at me? You think, the poor guy, how can I help him? And that's my story. That's it. And I'd be happy to take questions, anything on Tibetan Buddhism. Quite honestly,